It's about time you have an easier, more efficient way to get caught up on the news. The Newsworthy breaks down the day's top stories in less than 15 minutes and gives you some lighter conversation starters along the way. Search The Newsworthy wherever you're listening now and follow or subscribe to The Newsworthy today.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Welton, joined by Sergeant Welton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
Oh, I hear the birds outside. They're so happy. I love when the weather starts to warm up like this because we have our beautiful snowy mountains in the distance and everything starts to turn green. Before living in this area, everything just starts to die and turn into weeds and I see price tags because then we have to pay additional for something, whether it's fire insurance or the fire department comes out and wants to make sure that we're Smokey Bear safe. Or
we have to bring a tractor and to grade our whole property. The manual labor starts happening. It's so nice when it's all green because then you start seeing all the life come out. The snakes, the lizards, what you name it. You start seeing it more and more, but there's always a cost to it.
One thing we hear a lot of first responders talk about is their dark humor. And Clint, you have told me so many stories where you'll say something and you have something related to dark humor and then you start to laugh it off. And to me, it's always a cover. And I don't mean that in a negative way. That's an adaptive behavior. And for a lot of first responders, dark humor helps to be able to create connection. It might diffuse tension, especially in the moment. And it helps to be able to process the unthinkable. But I don't ever hear anybody talk about what happens when it stops working. Yeah,
I think with, we have all these defensive mechanisms that we in place, especially being in law enforcement or as a first responder over years, we start, you develop that dark humor and then you start seeing this progression. And I've seen it with numerous officers over time is where a joke's made about that situation and you'll see everyone responding how you think they would. And then you'll see one person where they're just kind of chuckle and they kind of turn and walk away from you. And it's not that they're offended by anything. It's just like they didn't find it funny or they don't have that dark humor is not settling with them to help them cope with whatever's going on.
Yeah, and I thought in today's episode, we can explore that moment when the laughter no longer relieves the pressure or maybe jokes start to feel hollow and the emotional weight that's underneath begins to surface. And I think it's important to just recognize that it's not a failure of your resilience, but it's often a sign that your nervous system is ready for basically a different level of processing and healing.
I think when we start experiencing that more and more and it's recognizing that, and I think we fail in general as first responders of being able to self-diagnose and be able to say, hey, there's something not right here. I need to figure out different avenues on how I can get this addressed because I'm not being my normal self. And that's where, like, for me, I've been very fortunate, especially in the 18 years that we've been married, as you bring that to my attention. You will say, hey, something's not right here. What's going on? And then we talk about it. We can work through it. But it's being able to have those people in your corner to be able to love and support you, to be able to help you through that situation. And if you're not recognizing it yourself, that's where your champions come into play.
So the psychological concept here is called maladaptive coping shift. And, coping mechanisms evolve over time. I've been in the gym a lot lately, and I feel like so I basically have like a 3-day schedule where I'll target 3 different areas of my body to be able to focus on everything top to bottom. And yet from week to week to week, I try to make sure that I'm confusing my body and my muscles nearly every single time. So my go-to is I'll go on my Instagram algorithm is basically all fitness. And so I'll go on there and I have a notepad on my phone and it'll target different areas of my body, right? Like my arms, my back, my abs. And I'll copy and paste different videos in there because I'll see something different. And I want to make sure that I'm not doing the same thing. Clint, look at my biceps. You can see we have a lot more tone going on.
Your biceps are bigger than mine.
And so I think it's the same thing when it comes to our coping mechanisms. What once protected you can often become insufficient when stress accumulates or emotional capacity begins to change. And I think that when dark humor loses its effectiveness, it signals a transition from avoidance-based coping towards something that's deeper and more emotionally aware and integrated.
And that's why I think it's so important for us in these realms is being able to look after one another and recognize, hey, last week you were good with this. What's going on? How are things going? What happened today to change that? And being able to have that conversation with your peers, with your subordinates, whatever it may be, and just take time and to listen to them. I think that's the hardest thing that especially we face in law enforcement. How many times do we actually sit down and just let people talk?
And we have to pay attention to this, but we also have to understand what we should be looking for. And I think that this often looks like maybe for you or the person that you're paying attention to, the jokes no longer feel like they're funny. Or emotional fatigue happens after that humor starts to fade. This happens a lot. You can call it a crash. You have increased irritability or flatness, maybe discomfort when serious conversations arise, or you're feeling alone even after everybody just shared in laughter. And
that's where when we start having that separation, we start feeling that us removing ourselves from those situations, we start going down this rabbit hole of we increase that separation more and more as time goes on until pretty much you look around and you're on an island all by yourself.
Yeah, and you'll know when that's happening. Maybe you start to laugh, and whereas before things would feel relieving and you would feel lighter, maybe you laugh, but then you still feel heavy and that relief doesn't last.
Yeah, and that's where it's so... I think we each go through that in our careers, and it's taking a time, and it could be, and it sneaks up on you so fast because it's not like it's something that gradually can come on. I mean, it can in some cases, but sometimes it just hits you like a ton of bricks. And that's where we have to step in as ourselves to say, hey, something's not right here.
Here's a great example too, is when you start to feel like that silence feels louder after the joke. So whereas once before you have that dark humor and everyone's laughing and then we can kind of sigh and like it's done, right? But then if you start to feel like that laughter happens and then there's that awkward dead silence that just feels so heavy, that might be a sign.
And so that's why one cool tool that I've always used with my guys, with my teams that I've been on, is debrief situations, and not just, not just humorously, but actually debriefing them and going through it. And when you see that person that's kind of shrinking back, it's not calling them out for shrinking back. It's kind of tactically going to each person and bringing them into this conversation. Because one, you could start conveying, okay, what's going on with them without even bringing it to head in front of everybody else.
Something else that I see too is there's a difference between having like the clown of the bunch versus somebody who maybe avoids talking seriously about calls because they use humor as a deflection every single time.
As you said that, I had one person come to mind, and no matter what, if there's something serious that's brought forward to them, they use humor, they use their kind of defensive mechanisms. And I called him out recently in one of these instances, and it brought it forward to his attention, and he really started thinking about it. And as he was kind of diagnosing what those issues were, and we had a really good conversation on it, being able to bring that to someone's attention, because they might not always recognize it for themselves, and being able to have these conversations and be there for one another. Like, we need to be there to love and support each other.
Yeah, and I think that's great to be able to kind of pinpoint things and be open about it. And there are healthier ways to cope when your humor starts to fall short. And I think the first is just to allow humor to exist without carrying everything, because humor doesn't have to be that go-to that does all of the work. And when we're able to create safe spaces for honest processing, then that vulnerability, like you just described, starts to help to be able to build that real relief.
Yeah, and because once you do that, and like 90% of the time with my guys and my team, I joke with them. I'm there to really guide them. And there's certain instances where hey, let's all jokes, let's do it, let's have fun, let's do this, until something where, okay, we need to start looking at this from the serious aspect of, okay, this is all jokes aside. You guys are doing an excellent job, but here's how we can improve.
There was a video that was going viral of a female who wakes up every single morning, and the first thing she does when she plants her feet on the ground is she jumps up and down 20 times. And evidently what happens chemically is it helps to release the extra melatonin that's still lingering around in our bodies. And so instead of having to wake up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, get your coffee, try to wake up for an hour, it helps to significantly reduce that time process. And I'm pointing that out because it's important to understand how much our body can serve us, and engaging the body to be able to help to discharge some of that stress by just simple movement helps to be able to restore a lot of that regulation.
So what it sounds like is I need to start waking up and doing some jumping jacks first thing when I wake up.
You in particular. I think that this episode, I hope, helped to be able to recognize that some coping strategies are basically evolving, and it's okay to normalize that transition and to offer healthier ways to be able to process that stress while still being able to preserve that connection and that culture. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.